5, 6, 7, 8. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
What's going on?
Well, this is the Smart in Public podcast. We are a podcast that talks about business, careers, life, you name it, through the eyes of PR and comms people. This is a special episode today. Let me tell you, we've got our very first guest, Ashish Patel, with us. Welcome. I'm clapping.
Thank you. No pressure. No pressure. Honor to be here.
Ashish is not only a longtime colleague, but he's a longtime friend of Devasy and I, and we worked together for many, many years. And so we're excited to have you on.
Thank you. Good to be here. Yes, we have lots of stories, so we've survived them all, so that's great.
Just making it through this thing called life, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Ashish, why don't you up? Yeah. You're welcome. You know what? You're welcome, sir. Thanks for being on. So why don't we start? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a native Californian. I've been here for a very, very long time. I started my career in communications in the year 2000, so about 24 years later, here we are. I started my career in the agency side, 11 years at the agencies, and then went in-house to my first and only in-house gig at Salesforce for 13 years. And so that is pretty much the short and sweet version, is that I've been working for 24 years, but only 3 different places. So, yeah.
I think between us all, we have like 30 years of Salesforce tenure. So it's been a large part of all of our lives. And what about, you're a dad as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your home life as well?
2 girls, currently at swimming practice right now, which is where I spend a ridiculous amount of my days. I would say 2 hours a day is somewhere near a pool. They're in the 3rd and 7th grade. So, yeah, nice. Lots of fun. Lots of unchoreographed dancing and singing happens every day.
Nice. Yes, I'm gonna have to come back to you when I'm heading into that tween stage and get all the advice. I need all.
Gotcha.
I'm going to tell a funny Ashish story. Is that okay?
I was just going to jump in with one too. You go first,
okay,
and
cool.
Then I'll go.
So there are lots to pick from. I'm going to tell a general story in that every year Salesforce has a conference. It's actually coming up very soon, called Dreamforce. And as part of Dreamforce, we bring a whole bunch of media over from the different markets. And so we'd always bring some Australian media over, and then I would bring some of my team. And so we would come over, and inevitably on maybe like the first or second night, or at the end of the conference, preferably at the end of the conference, but sometimes it happened at the beginning, we would head out for some team bonding, maybe a little bit of drinking. And I would say to my team, let's keep it under control, right? We're here, we're visiting, we've got media, let's keep it under control. And inevitably the next day, some or all of my team would look a little worse for wear. And I would be saying, guys, what happened last night? Where'd you go? What'd you do? And lo and behold, every time there was one name that popped up.
Goodness.
Ashish took us here. Ashish did this. And then I would see Ashish, and he'd look fresh as a daisy, my friend.
Yes. Every time.
I can't tell what happened. I don't know if I want to know what happened, but it was always little old Ashish leading the Australians astray in San Francisco.
In my defense, and
okay.
there's very
you have the floor, sir.
The Aussies do tend to be the ones that are out late, and I don't mean the actual comms team that you led. It was usually the journos themselves.
True.
And so they're the ones who typically want to see more and more of San Francisco in the evening. So
you were working, is what you're saying.
I was just being hospitable. I was a host. Yeah absolutely.
Thank God you did, because I hate going out late. So, I mean, someone had to take them out. So I appreciate you taking one for the team and getting those journalists out of the town.
100%. There's always, and one of your teammates who tends to also be one of the hosts.
Yes.
Would try to shake your journalist, but he can't shake your journalist. No. They actually want to keep it going. Yeah. And
don't worry, we've named Seamus already from this podcast. Seamus, shaming you as the person who would be.
Right. I was trying to protect him, but yeah, he was always trying to do his best just to kind of get them home as well. But
sure,
they have a mind of their own.
Seamus is pretty much our mascot on the podcast now. Yeah. By episode 3, he's been solidified.
Fantastic. Yes. You need to get one of those stick figures with his head on it.
Yeah.
Like the big.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
This is actually a perfect lead-in, because my memory of Ashish is Okay, at Dreamforce as well. We spent a lot of time at Dreamforce together as a team.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always had to do as a job was take media from the media kind of room where they would write their stories or kind of just chill out and like get away from the conference. So taking them down during the keynotes, and what you had to do is you had to hold this lollipop kind of sign that said media, and you host them and you walk them down and put them in their seats to make sure they're in the right spot and that they're all there. I remember it was so funny. It was one of the very first Dreamforces that I did. And Ashish, let me start with, you step as a PR person at this conference, you're doing 20,000 steps in a day, at least. You're walking like crazy. And so sometimes instead of just running around and having to gather reporters or executives or anything like that, the biggest break that you can get is being the lollipop guy to take the journalist down. You don't have to think. You're just kind of corralling and walking. And I remember Ashish and I, like from the very beginning, would always battle of who gets to be lollipop guy so that we could just have a moment of peace at the conference.
Yep. Sometimes you don't want to talk to anyone after a full week of just talking to people, and it's just a follow me
job.
Give me
a stick and off I go. Right. Yeah.
If you need any hot tips on how to navigate a conference intelligently, just email Ashish at he's your guy.
I'm here for it.
I love it.
We've got a ton of questions for you. What I want to start out with is kind of talking about a little bit of your role at Salesforce and what you build out from just your career in general and the journey that you had there. So maybe if you could take us through, you were at Salesforce for 13 years. Walk us through the pros and cons of maybe being at a company for that long looks like, and kind of how that all comes together.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when I started at Salesforce, I was a product guy. I still very much am. So I've done a lot of product PR, and it's probably the core of what I've kind of always done, which is great. Huge need for that, right? Enterprise tech is not something that you or I or most folks typically install daily in their homes or use every day. Mm-hmm. So it requires a great deal of explaining and communicating out, and companies place a lot of value on that. Now, when I started at Salesforce and being in one place for 13 years, that's kind of where I started because it was my bread and butter. On the agency side, came in, started running and managing a product or two. Over time, was able to have the fortune of leading the entire product PR team. Salesforce, sometimes I kind of feel like, and you all know this, is a bit of an anomaly. It's a unique and special ride that I was on, and that when we were there, when I started, in 2011, we were a $2 billion company that had 5,000 employees. Wow. And it had two primary products, a sales product and a service product, and then this development platform that was still kind of emerging. It's kind of where I actually started my product PR chops at Salesforce, was actually helping to promote this platform, the notion that you can build and customize it and do far more than just sales or just service. And then over time, from 2011, 5,000 people, 2 billion, to this year, the company is going to be 70,000 employees plus already, and is looking to do 38 billion. So over that time, there was amazing opportunity in the product areas that they built out over time. So marketing and commerce, analytics, all of these AI solutions that we hear a lot about now. And so what's really been great about doing product PR for a company like that, again, a bit unusual in a great way, is that their growth was allowing me to also grow my career, because it allowed me to help them launch products, move into new markets, help integrate acquisitions and people within them, help figure out how we balance telling the stories of all these different products, which have their own different competitors, have their own landscapes they compete with, have their own executives who have specific goals and agendas of their own. It was cool. It was a great opportunity for me to come in, provide a level of consulting, build a team around me, and really just tell new and dynamic stories. So I'll stop there, but I think that's really what, the first, I would say, 7 years of my time, were there doing.
Yeah.
What would you say? You go.
I was just going to ask, do you think it would have been different for you, or you maybe wouldn't have stayed as long if there wasn't that growth from the company as well? Yeah. Do you think that was part of it, is like this balance of, it wasn't like you just stayed doing one product for 7 years. Like it was like we went from 2 to 8 products and a team. But you think if the company was a little bit slower in its growth or a bit different, that would have made you do things differently?
Yeah, 100%. I think that it kind of felt like a different job and a new challenge. There were new markets and new buyers to understand, different deal cycles and understanding that. So understanding where the storytelling and what type of stories actually added value. There's a lot of very interesting challenges to kind of just get your hands dirty around. And so that was very valuable. The other thing, if I'm being completely honest, and we all know this in the comms world, it really was being around great managers and great leaders as well that you could always learn from. Not just within the comms org, there were plenty. And so I've had really amazing bosses and managers throughout that 13 years. But at the same time, just the executives and the business partners and stakeholders, it really was just great. The company was in that place where it was able to hire, some of the best talent in our market and in our industry. And so all of that was kind of this kind of perfect storm, if you will. But yeah, I think ultimately when it comes down to it, first and foremost was the company's growth. Created professional growth, right?
Yeah.
So it was that and the managers, I would say, were my top two that I think are always things that, to look for anybody really kind of thinking about whether to kind of ride with a company or whether there may be limitations there in terms of your growth.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's really interesting from joining at a company that is going through growth where your team is relatively small, is that you get to work across like product marketing with the sales teams. Like you really get to understand the business and build those relationships as the company grows as well, and gives you a little bit of that kind of edge of being able to predict things that you need or pull on certain levers within the organization to be a bit of a smarter comms person.
Yeah, I would say the other thing you have to be careful of is just repeating the same playbook, or executives just expect, or your stakeholders expect a certain thing to be done a certain way when the market moves on, or there are new ways to do things. And again, you could be very much, you could have tunnel vision in terms of other ways to accomplish communications objectives. If again you're kind of around and in the same environment, and so that's also something you have to be careful of.
So we're all sort of post Salesforce now. We all were there for a while. Looking at it in the rear vision, what do you think was like one of the best things about staying that long? And then what do you think is one of the maybe the cons of being at a company for that long now that we're sort of on the other side of it?
Yeah, I mean the best things, obviously, I think that the network is insane, right? It's really been, over time you build a lot of great relationships. I think that as communicators, it's our job to really connect so many parts of an organization to achieve these goals. And so you just build such great relationships, and those relationships can kind of serve you. I have so many mentors and leaders who I continue to tap into on a regular basis that are pretty much all over, not just tech, but have moved beyond into other industries. And so incredibly grateful for that. And I think that is one of the best things, is that you're always going to have this experience together, which is, again, invaluable. I think in terms of the things that, again, to watch out for, we've covered some of them. I think it is something like, you don't want to stay stagnant in terms of the type of role or the things that you're doing in product PR specifically. And there is a tendency for a lot of companies to basically just communicate the same way, where the industry is changing a lot, right? Where in terms of especially the amount of real estate and footprint in terms of media coverage that you can gather is obviously shrinking. The types of things that get attention are shrinking. The news cycles are far more faster. They're not even 24-hour news cycles, really. At the end of the day, you really have to really stay close to what is really going to drive and sustain interest in the media, if that is really your primary objective. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there's just, you get into a bit of a trap of doing the same things and repeating the same playbook.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're going to touch on, you then kind of moved into some different roles in that time. But before we do that, I want to touch on the product PR piece. Because I think for our Australian audience, it's a lot less common to have a sort of a product PR role. Often you'll be going in-house for a broader, you're going to come in and do comms for Australia, and you might be part of a team, but it's not necessarily going to be product. I think that's shifting a little bit, I will say, as companies get bigger in our market. We're starting to see a little bit of that. But I know in the US, one of the things that surprised me when I joined Salesforce is that there was like individual PR people for individual products. But if I'm a younger PR person and I kind of like the sound of that, what do you think is kind of a good tip for if you wanted to get into product PR and it sounds interesting, what should they be doing to kind of get ready for that role in-house if they're in an agency now, for example?
Yeah, I think, and again, if you're in an agency now, right, you're never going to just necessarily kind of directly go into the same technology space that you were potentially supporting with clients on that side. And so you need to be able to ask very, very fundamental questions that I think are just really healthy to really understand products. You need to be able to get your ability to get a hold of a market and the landscape and the competitors, to be able to ask questions about how a product is used and sold, why a company might choose an alternative to that product. Just be very inquisitive about that sort of thing. The other thing that you need to be able to do is how do you simplify that message? And how do you avoid risk it being so generic that it sounds like everybody else's marketing and everybody else's communications? Where are the sweet spots? And what are the things that I could do to make my product portfolio or the technology that I'm representing really stand out? And I think that's where a lot of executives and leaders struggle, and that's where they're looking for a lot of communications help. Everything sounds jargony, everything sounds the same. And so really, I think, as somebody new starting out in product PR, jumping into a product they've never had exposure to, right? Sometimes people have to move from supporting software in a PR agency to kind of supporting a hardware company, and just really, just really diving into it, diving head first, talking to a lot of people, asking a lot of questions about the space, and just really being prepared for every conversation you have.
Yeah, I think being inquisitive is a really good one. Yeah, asking lots and lots of questions to get under the hood of a product. I love that.
With product comms in a big company like Salesforce, you've got all of these different levers that you can pull on in terms of talking to product marketing, talking to, the customer services kind of side of things, really to understand that product. For somebody that's going into a startup, and the startup is a product, which we're seeing so much with AI companies that are coming out and things like that, where they have to balance the product positioning and then also the corporate message side of things. And they're kind of wearing two hats. Like, what advice would you offer to somebody that's getting into that? Like, how do you balance that role and still do a good job?
Yeah, it's tough because the company is the product. It's a very different thing than like a traditional enterprise company that's got a massive portfolio of different offerings. I think at the end of the day, the product has to be the star. That's where the differentiation has to happen. That's especially at the startup world. They need to really understand and trust a product for them to give it a shot, to give it a try, for companies to truly adopt something that is relatively unproven. You really, really need to build that, I think, authority, technical credibility. And I would say anytime that you are trying to stack rank what's most important, it always has to be the stability, and I would say the credibility of the product. And if you're making that shine, the company will follow suit. But that's my point of view. I think you should also, get some perspectives from startup comms folks as well in terms of how they battle that. But it's not easy.
Don't tell us how to run our podcast, Ashish.
Sorry.
No, I like that. And I think there's also that area of when you're a smaller company and then you get acquired. It makes me think of my time at Heroku, where I'd come in right after Salesforce had acquired Heroku, and we went from being a company that wanted to stay a company. And then Salesforce was turning it into a product. And so the messaging and the positioning had to flip, and that had to merge in with how we talked about the business and our executives and how we did that as a whole. I know that you probably have seen that a million times over, as we all have with Salesforce and acquisitions, but that was a particularly hard challenge for me, kind of reshifting that mindset and setting expectations with executives so that they can then realize how they need to be thinking about the product as well within that smaller acquired company.
Yeah, the analogy or the similar challenge we had on the Salesforce side as well. Every one of the products is a standalone company, and it almost felt that way, right? There were different competitors. These are billion-dollar businesses that the company has. They have goals for driving success, for building pipeline, for driving adoption. Each of them do, and each of their leaders do, and these are leaders you support. And the biggest thing is, how do we help them understand what the priorities are of the company and the company's message? And it can change from year to year depending on, what is the priority, what is the vision, where's the market heading, and so certain products which were potentially doing more business than a smaller product may have to take a back seat to that product, for example. And the spotlight might be on a more up and coming offering, etc. And so that was something that was always this very interesting game of push and pull, in terms of appeasing and trying to deliver really successful comms programs for all of them. But at the same time, they all probably got a varying degree of support or love in a particular moment. Like a Dreamforce is a good example, since we were talking about that earlier, or even a world tour or any other launch moment. And so just kind of having to, I would say, manage all these different priorities is always a fun challenge. You all right there, Katie?
Everything all right?
The sun is in my face. It hurts. I'm sorry.
You do that, and I'll touch on what Ashish just said. I think it's really interesting, like when you're at headquarters versus out in the regions. And I think it's interesting hearing you talk about that, because I think the challenge we had was even bigger than that, is like you're trying to tell a regional story. And then within that, there's a product story. But actually, the product story is sort of second to how we building the market, who is Salesforce, what does it look like, insert other company here if you're in a regional role. And so I think it's funny, all of these things have these different layers. And one of the things I learned over time, being at Salesforce for so long, was that everybody's job is hard. It's just different. And trying to kind of navigate that global environment, HQ versus a region, product versus a corporate story, like all of this stuff. And if, as long as you kind of have this mindset of like, actually, everybody's working really hard, everybody's doing, their intentions are good. We now need to find the way to make this a really cohesive story. And I think comms plays a really crucial role sometimes in getting people to see it that way and kind of bringing the company together on that. So I think, it's a really interesting perspective. But then you didn't stay in product PR. You decided to make a change. So maybe can you talk us through kind of where you went from there within Salesforce and the type of roles? I think that would be really interesting for people to hear.
Yeah, I think the most interesting switch, and I think that was it was based on the needs of the organization and the company, is like, ultimately had to evolve. I think when I started in 2011, right, there were CRM reporters at all of these trades. There were people much more deeply focused on just the industry that Salesforce operated in, which is this whole CRM space. And over time, that has gone away. They're far more generalists. They're reporters that are covering 5 to 7 beats on any given day. They're just stretched. And so what is really going to make and drive coverage was no longer what it used to be.
Yeah.
Companies needed to take control and tell their story in so many ways, because, again, the way the stories that need to be told, we can't rely always on the media or third parties to tell them, or tell them in the way that you want them to be told. They may cover a specific shiny breaking news moment or something that is really in the spotlight, but somebody who's buying your product needs to see far more in the communications from a company, right? There are all these stages. We talk about enterprise deal cycles, for example, being very long, right? 6 to 18 months, right? Yeah. In that time, you go through different phases of wanting to understand different parts of a solution. And so how do you partner with the organization to figure out how we tell those stories, and what are the different types of stories that need to be told, because we're not necessarily going to be telling them elsewhere. And so that's really what kind of led to us kind of doubling down in the newsroom and building out our own kind of platform for storytelling, which I think, again, not a novel idea. Everyone's doing it now. And I think it's just fundamentally so important because of the different types of stories that need to be told, the nuance within them, and being able to have that footprint of content that people can access. It's also a great way to, again, build authority and build trust. Salesforce, for example, is a great brand that has built a lot of trust with its customers, with its buyers. Why not use that trust to kind of build a resource for people? And so we started out the newsroom, right, starting to build it for journalists, right, giving them the access to everything from breaking news to imagery and things that they need to complete their story, bios of executives they've met with, just other additional resources, research that we do. And then it turned into, as we kind of explored who was visiting the site, it actually became more of a front door for the experiences of a lot of people who are trying to understand Salesforce, whether
Yeah.
it was a prospect or an investor. Maybe it's somebody who's starting at the company who just wants to get up to speed on the newest things the company's talking about. And all of a sudden, we were starting to see that it was more than just a media site. It's just a literally a front door to
Mm.
experience Salesforce, understand what's going on with the company, what the latest conversations are and trends are that they're really dialed into, and the latest leaders and their perspectives and voices. And so there's just so many different things that can be done with a newsroom once you create it. And so that's been kind of, I would say, the last few years was watching a team and leading a team that really created this amazing platform for the latest developments on the company.
Mm.
And what do you think? Like, I think a lot of people hear newsroom and then they kind of think blog, and there's a little bit of that. Well, what's the difference, and why would I need a blog versus a newsroom? And I think you kind of hit on it in the sense of who you built it for originally. But I'm just interested in your perspective. If I'm at a company and we don't have anything, where would you start, and what would be the difference between a blog and a newsroom, do you think?
Yeah, it varies because everyone interprets those two things in different ways. A lot of smaller companies just have one central platform for all of it. The way I look at a blog is it can be very much focused on those that have already adopted the technology. So your users, your community, it can be very forum-like. It could help
Mm.
people solve problems. Whereas a newsroom, in its traditional sense, I still look at it as reporting. It's not independent outside reporting. It is editorial leaders and people who
Mm.
are driving editorial, very much reporting on the company itself and what's going on within it, the behind the scenes story of how a product might get created, or a leader's vision for the future of a particular market, or the success of a handful of companies that are really driving a lot of value and ROI from a product, to the speeds and feeds of a new function and feature.
Mm.
So you're kind of using it to report out, and it has a much more broader audience, which means you maybe don't want to get too technical or don't want to focus on
Yeah.
that person who has access to a screen and needs help navigating how to build that app or what have you. So that's the way I kind of look at it. A blog, you can do a lot of different things, but a newsroom, we primarily focused on being a thought leader, establishing your authority and credibility in a space, spotlighting your products, your technology, your leaders, and then always providing a place where people can always get the latest and greatest on what's going on. So
Yeah.
there is a level of chronology to it that the blog may not necessarily also need, right? So that's more or less the way I look at it. And of course, I don't think that there's a right or a wrong, but that's traditionally how we've seen it.
On the Salesforce newsroom, there is a research stat library that I haven't seen any other company do it to the level that they have done it, which I think is incredible. It's because Salesforce does so many reports, like state of
Yeah.
marketing, state of sales, all that. It helps reporters. You can go in and search by industry, you can search by role, you can search by particular stats and pull that out. So it's also this, resource for journalists who are already writing about Salesforce to go in and find a stat in the library that's recent and relevant to the story
Yep.
that they're writing without having to do the back and forth with the PR person or
Yep.
coordinate that way, which I thought was pretty genius when that got
Yeah,
rolled
that
out.
team has done an amazing job. The citations from research are just really impressive, and the amount of stories that I come across that just happen to randomly mention
Mm.
Salesforce research is amazing. And I think, yeah, there's a huge appetite just for insights and data, and Salesforce has done a really good job through its research programs around all of that. So.
Love it. I feel like we're almost at time. That has like flown by.
I know.
Ashish, is there anything else you want to share? Any advice for young PR professionals who maybe are just starting out, or even people like us who have been around for a while and are looking at what they do next?
The biggest thing, I think, kind of closing on this whole concept of a newsroom, is that it really opens the door to so many different types of communications roles.
Mm.
Because when you are doing traditional not to just call it public relations, but more media relations oriented work. There was a different flow to the type of work that you had. You were launching things, you were engaging with reporters. The ROI was literally looked upon as coverage and clips and volumes and reach. But when you start to build your own asset, your own property, that allows you to tell your own stories, you can really learn a lot about the audiences that are coming in. You can really focus on how to use different types of technology like video, social media to amplify bits and pieces of your stories, to understand where people who are reading a story might be going in other parts of your business or other websites that they might be going to check out, or other parts of the product pages that you offer or the offers that you have. And so there's just a whole new world of discovery of data and insights that I think really investing in owned kind of allows you to do. And so I would just encourage a lot more folks who are interested in building newsrooms or blogs or content programs, to really look at communications as a place to potentially explore their career, right? Because there's just so much more value you can offer that part of an organization, and there's going to be a huge demand for that area. So, yeah.
Love it.
Nope.
Really brought that home. I love it. We ask ourselves every single week, we're talking about how we're smart in public. What's one thing that we've done that's dumb in private? We're going to ask you that, Ashish. Yeah. Do you want to start, or do you want us to warm you up?
It sounds like, definitely, you already have a few in mind. So
every day I feel like there's something I do that's dumb in private. My one this week is it's embarrassing, but I'm going to share it anyway. I am going to blame sleep deprivation because one of my little twins is not sleeping very well at the moment. She likes to get up at like 3 a.m. for a bit of a party. And then, it leaves me as a shell of a human for the next day. So I took my kids to daycare after one of these nights, dropped them off fine, all good. And then in the afternoon, I've reached that peak, like 4 p.m. I'm really tired. I've been up since 3 a.m. and I go to pick them up and I get them all bundled in. Now I've got twins, right? And they're only just walking. So to get them through the car park out of daycare, I have to put them in the pram and then get them to the car. So I've got my 4-year-old hanging onto the side of the pram. I've got the twins in the pram. The twins are tired. They're losing their minds. I've got to get everybody into the car seats. I've got 3 car seats, 3 buckles to do. You can imagine. So I'm doing all of that. I get them all in. Everybody's happy. And then I get in the car and off we go home. And about 75% of the way home, I realize I didn't put the pram in the boot of the car and I've just left it in the parking spot at daycare. And at this point, I'm almost home. The kids are like just feral. They're ready for dinner. And I think, well, what am I going to do? I can't turn around and go back and get this pram. And then I think, who's going to steal a pram? Like, nobody's going to steal a pram, are they? Surely it'll just be there. Anyway, so as I normally do when I do something dumb in private, I ring my husband and I said, I've left the pram at daycare, but don't worry, I think it'll be fine. It's in the car park. No one will steal it. We'll just get it tomorrow. No, that was not acceptable. And so my husband then had to leave work, go to daycare and get the pram. Luckily, as I suspected, it was still there because, we live in a nice community and no one's stealing my double pram. Let's face it, nobody wants a double pram unless you really need it. And so, yeah, that's my dumb in private. I left the pram at daycare in the parking lot.
I feel like that pram wouldn't have lasted. I'm using pram now. I'm Australian again. The stroller wouldn't have lasted a second in San Francisco. That would have been utilized instantly.
Yeah.
Well,
just
yeah,
for carrying
storage. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Just carrying butts and bobs.
I only now know what pram is. I didn't know it until the end of this conversation. But
this is why I need Boyson to translate me because I didn't realize we use pram.
It's like
use stroller.
It's like a tech acronym. I'm gonna pretend like I'm smart and then I'm gonna Google it later. But thank you. We've cleared that later. We've cleared that up. I also didn't realize that by smart in public or dumb in public you meant non-work related.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
Do you want to back up with a
We're very
story?
professional and good at what we do. All of the other stuff is like, how do we hold our lives together?
No. So the other day, I think this was like 2 weeks ago, I think my wife and I had stayed up watching some ridiculous stuff on TV. My wife is into this phase where every basically Netflix series that involves witches we are watching. So So yeah, I don't know what it was exactly, but we
I'm
were
into
literally
it.
up till like 2 or 3 in the morning watching it. Obviously, I had to wake up and take the kids to school, and I make them eggs sometimes, right? So I was gonna fry some eggs. Literally was not paying attention, half asleep, and so I cracked the egg, threw the egg in the trash, put the eggshell in the frying pan with the butter. Probably was going on for at least, I don't know, 5 minutes until my kid realized, hey, Dad, it smells, and I don't know what you're doing. Anyway, so that was the most recent one I had.
That is exactly what we're looking for.
And I think that's
Fried
kind
an
of what you're looking
eggshell.
for.
That's what
So you
it
can,
is. Yeah.
so
Did it catch on fire?
didn't catch on fire, just really smells.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I can imagine.
Okay,
Terrible.
boyfriend, hit us.
Okay, so well, the first dumb part is that it starts with being influenced by TikTok. So
Okay, yeah.
I was on TikTok the other day. I saw this new shower head that you can buy that's supposed to filter your water. Duffy's
I'm already dying. But anyway, yep, continue.
So I bought this shower head and I was like, great, it's supposed to be really good for your skin, good for your hair. Can't wait. Gonna install this thing. The thing comes and who needs the instructions, right? You screw off this old shower head, you screw the old one on. Well, let me tell you, I need the instructions because not only did it take me 3 separate times to get it properly put on, but then I forgot about the little water blocker that they put in there.
Oh,
Depending
yeah.
on what state you live in the US, you can remove it and have more water power or not. And I didn't know which way was the one I wanted. So of course I started the first installation with the opposite way. Turned on the shower, wasn't working, had
Without
to take
the
it.
blocker.
Yeah, had to take it back off, test it out again, but then I wasn't sure, so I put it back in and then I retested the other one. And so, an hour and a half later, here we are with our new shower.
Is it good though? I mean, that's the real, has the hair gotten shinier?
It's only been 2 weeks.
Okay.
A week.
Too soon to
Maybe
tell.
not even, yeah. So too soon to tell. But you know what I'm going to do is I'm testing the window in the shower. And if there's less hard watermarks, because we have hard water in Oregon,
Okay.
then maybe that'll be an indicator. But
Well,
who
I'll have to
knows?
tell you if your hair gets nicer as we go along.
Thanks. I'm going to see if my grays grow back faster. That's
Yeah.
going to be the indicator if my
Yeah.
hair color stays longer.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Well, Ashish, thank you so much. As you can see, this floats between, professional and talking about installing shower heads. So it's really all over the top. But as our inaugural first guest, we're super, super grateful that you gave up your time and all of your insights. So thank you so much for being with us this week.
This has been a lot of fun.
Come back
Can't wait
anytime.
to listen. Can't wait to listen to the other guests. Now I'm just going to be really worried about. Okay, I was your first guest. Like, did I
Here's
just completely botch this? Is everybody else after me just going to crush it?
what you can also do. I wouldn't recommend it to any of our other listeners, but you can just listen to yours and pretend like you were the only guest. And
Okay,
then
yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Perfect.
Nothing I love more than listening to the sound of my own voice, which is
You know what?
cringy. Yes.
It's a joy. It's a joy every day.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you,
love you.
Ashish.
Thank you so much.
All right, I take it. I push this leave button right here.
Yeah, you betcha.
Good to see us
All
later.
right. Fancy. See you guys.
See ya.
Yeah.
How good is Ashish?
Oh, I love Ashish. That was great. I loved his stuff about being inquisitive and where newsrooms are headed. I think that's really, really interesting for people starting out is don't just think of traditional media relations roles. Think about data, think about, editorial roles. I love that. And he's a great human. So it was so nice to have him on.
I felt like I had 6 questions that we didn't even get to just
I know.
looking down
Love
at my
having
list. Yeah, no, it's good. So thanks everybody for listening in. Just a few housekeeping things before we leave. If you have a topic that you want us to talk about, or you think that there's something that we missed or something you want to add, email us at hello@smartandpublicpod.com. We're going to be launching this series pretty soon now, I think within the next week. So we'll start being not live, but within the same week and time frame when we start recording in the future. So please listen, rate, review, and subscribe. You can find us on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, so Apple Podcasts, Spotify, yada, yada. And then all the places. And then please follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We are at Smart and Public Pod.
Awesome.
All right.
Love you, boyson. Have a great week.
You too. Okay.
Bye.